Hello, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar with Brainwave about periodic versus continuous access reviews. My name is Leanne DeBurr, and I work with the marketing team here at Brainwave. I just wanted to point out that there is a question or in the chat feature also. If you have any questions as we proceed through this webinar, please list them for us and we can address them at the very end. In a little bit, you'll be hearing from Cyril Goulin, who is the CEO of Brainwave, who will be doing most of the presentation. But first, let's take a look at a little bit of information and statistics with regards to Brainwave. There we go. So here we have our corporate profile. You can see that we've been around since 2010. That gives us about a little over 10 years of experience in this domain. We have offices in Europe and North America to serve our customers. We have about 70 enterprise customers and thousands of worldwide users. You can see some of them in the box on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. So now we're going to move on, and I'm going to introduce you again to Cyril Goulin, who is the CEO of Brainwave, and he will be taking the presentation on from here. There you go, Cyril. You're welcome.
How are you? Hi, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. I'm really very excited to do this presentation to you. This is a new webinar session that we've put together to talk about a topic that triggers a lot of interest, which is the user access review topic, and we'll try to tackle this topic from a quite different angle from traditional presentations. So without further ado, we'll start by defining some concepts about periodic versus continuous reviews and compare the two concepts. We'll illustrate that with selected use cases, draw a conclusion, and hopefully answer your questions. As Leanne said, we are looking forward to your questions, and you can enter those questions in the GoToWebinar screen. So let's jump ahead. I'll start with a quote that is very recent, and I've just picked it a few days ago from a website. Jay Gasley is the Cybersecurity Infrastructure and Security Agency technical strategist in the US. He was invited in a hearing at the NIST, and he told them identity is everything now. Every chief information security officer should be asking themselves questions like, do you know who you're trusting? And when did you last validate? And I think that really says it all when it comes to user access review and the need to perform those periodic assessments of who you trust over your information system and your assets. So where's my mouse? Sorry about that. So first, periodic access reviews. How does it work? Little drawing to explain how the periodic access review works, but I guess most of you have already experienced those reviews. They are quite widespread, to be honest. It starts with building the map, the inventory of all users, and their permissions, their authorizations to different IT assets that are sensitive, that are relevant to the scope you want to review. Because we're talking about a periodic review, that means that every period of time, based on the schedule, you're gonna take a snapshot, a photo of those authorizations, and push those authorizations to the reviewers. And each reviewer will have to make informed decisions about the adequateness of access for each user compared to their job responsibilities and so on, and of course with compliance in mind. So is it adequate, is it not adequate? So the decision is either yes or no, somehow approve, revoke, and whenever you say no to the question, that means that there's something to fix, either remove an access or modify the access, basically. So we're talking about a formal scheduled decision-making process. It's a decision-making process, which is really important from a compliance perspective, with several very specific attributes. The fact that we're operating in a limited time frame, there's a deadline. You have to review all your records before the deadline. You have to ensure completeness and accuracy, of course, again, because of the compliance mandate. And you want to enforce full accountability from each reviewer, meaning that there's an audit trail, meaning that each decision is documented, recorded, and the user, the reviewer, is accountable for those decisions. Measuring progress is fairly simple because we have this scope that has to be reviewed before the deadline. We can measure the percentage or number of records that have been reviewed or not, and that gives you a measure of progress.
So Cyril, I was just going to ask you, and you put our slide up here for us, whether or not these periodic access reviews meet the needs of every situation that we may have.
Yes, and I jumped ahead. I clicked a little too early. Sorry about that, Leanne. But you are right. That's a very good question indeed. Thank you for asking. We've experienced a number of feedbacks from customers. One very regular feedback is that the reviewers are missing the deadline. They may be missing the deadline because there's a lot of things to review. They may be missing the deadline because they have to investigate. They have to inquire to other colleagues to do the review, and it takes some time, and yeah, basically. Also things like engineering data. So if I have access, or if I provide access to engineering data, that may be a risk from my IP protection standpoint. It may not be a compliance risk because there is no financial data involved, for instance. But how do you cope with those risks that are not compliance oriented? Probably user access review from this periodic review is not the best way to address those kinds of risks. Also, if you have data quality issues in your access, a lot of, for instance, orphan accounts that you cannot assign to any user, or IDs that are ambiguous or things like that, it will be difficult to perform the access review because you will have a lot of authorizations that you cannot really assign to any reviewer. So you need to address those data quality issues before you can actually perform the periodic access review. And one last feedback that we've heard from many customers, which is that the review is performed every semester or every quarter or maybe every month. But what if you come to find that there are important things that were missed and that you are reviewing 3 months later? Some level of risks. This compliance-oriented review is not well suited to fix things that have a high risk impact. It's really a compliance mechanism. So after the fact, we are checking that everything is as it is supposed to be. It's not really tackling the risk factor, which is when a problem is uncovered, you have to fix it as soon as possible. Hence, continuous access reviews. So continuous access reviews is a totally different approach. Think about this big funnel that will capture situations, events, anomalies, problems of a certain type, and will streamline those so that they can be processed in a queue by operators, which will investigate those situations, try to find what's the problem, and try to fix, to address those issues, and make the records pristine. So this continuous approach is very different from a philosophical standpoint, even though it can use exactly the same software solution to perform. It's an ongoing improvement process. We are capturing and processing information, so it's very different from the periodic review, in the sense that it's aimed at addressing issues and reducing risks, not performing a compliance process. It's not limited by time. You process spontaneously, or on the fly the events that are detected, which could be anomalies, deviations, updates, etc. Anything that is worth investigating. Basically, it can be a collective initiative, in the sense that one or several reviewers can be involved. And the outcome of this process is usually some additional piece of information that is added to your system of records. Could be fixing some wrong data, could be entering another attribute, could be a documentation update or something like that. So that's usually what we find out. So when to use either or of those two approaches. Periodic access reviews are really well suited in when you have compliance-driven requirements. You have a well-defined scope of things that have to be reviewed, because there's a mandate that says so, every quarter, every semester, every month, whatever. You know who are the reviewers. They are well defined. They know what they have to review, and basically there's this formal process that sits in place. Obviously, it's not well suited when you want to review events as they occur, or as soon as possible. The strength of this process is really that you have a full audit trail, you have perfect accountability, and you can ensure the completeness and accuracy of the process. So you can make sure that you review comprehensively the scope, and you can demonstrate your compliance to auditors. Obviously, the drawback is it's a quite rigid process, and you have to balance between the frequency at which you run your periodic access reviews and the duration of those reviews, because you cannot have overlap, and you also have to let enough time for the reviewers to do their work. Continuous access reviews are quite different. They are risk-driven. It could be a spontaneous review, could be really as needed ad hoc kind of review. Also a more collaborative process than the periodic access review, which also means a more diffuse accountability, because there may be one or several people involved in each decision process. So it's not well suited for compliance demonstration. However, it can be quite efficient, especially if you have a lot of problems to address, to solve, to fix, and quite versatile in the sense that it can adapt to many different contexts and use cases. Let's jump into the comparison about the requirements to perform those two types of reviews. So this serves different purposes, compliance versus risk reduction, but somehow the requirements are quite the same. First requirement is you need to have this holistic access inventory. I mean, the fact that you need to have the list of records that have to be reviewed, either from the compliance perspective, or because you want to identify specific events or situations that need to be reviewed. Those records, they come from multiple sources, different types of data that are in heterogeneous formats. So building those records is a job by itself. You need some technology to do that. Also, you also need an engine to reliably assign work to the different reviewers. Sometimes the number of reviewers can be in the range of hundreds of thousands of reviewers. You need to follow contributions, you need to send reminders, etc., in order to get the job done, especially for the periodic access review, because there's a deadline. So again, you need some kind of technology such as a workflow engine to do that. And finally, if you have an improved productivity, especially when you need to fix things, when you need to trigger remediation action or things like that, you need an integration with external systems such as an ITSM, so IT ticketing system, or an identity and access management system to perform the remediation. All right.
So Cyril, tell us, does it ever make any sense for people to use both of these access review strategies at the same time?
So yes, it totally makes sense, and I'll say that it is something that we see more and more. So let me show you a few use cases that I put together that illustrate the use either of one mechanism or the other, or a combination of both. So the first use case is really SOX compliance. SOX compliance is really the I guess periodic access reviews were made for the SOX compliance requirements in the first place back in the early 2000s. So here in this organization, we're talking about quarterly review schedules. They are reviewing user permissions for what makes sense from a SOX perspective. And if you are a SOX company, you know that not everything, not all the assets, not all the data, not all the systems are SOX relevant. What SOX relevant means any type of business application or system that is processing financial transactions, including all the technological stack, so the supporting infrastructure, servers, databases, network elements, etc., that power those business apps. But also, if you look at the access to the business application, we're talking about the SOX sensitive authorizations, which means that you may have some kind of right level access to the data, or you can alter the system configuration. So if you only have read-only access, view access, or it's not really in the scope of the SOX review. So it's probably going to be ignored or maybe approved by default. So it's not part of the scope, right? Obviously, a revocation decision triggers a service ticket. So we want to automate the way to deprovision the access if it's been revoked. And what's really important is that each periodic access review generates a review report, a compliance report, which is externally audited. So it's a full chain of accountability, really. The schedule looks as this: preparing the campaign, capturing the scope, preparing the review lists for each reviewer, takes a couple of days. Then the reviewers have a 30-day window to perform the review. It's a strict deadline, and then takes about 2 weeks to consolidate all the results and perform the remediation, so triggering the ITSM tickets and revoking unwanted access and so on. And this is done every quarter, so it's a recurring loop. What I must say is that during the 30 days where the reviewers have to review, they benefit from multiple features to ease the effort. There are multiple ways and tricks to lower the burden of actually performing the review. For instance, you may have pre-approval for specific access that, for instance, either hasn't changed since the previous time because you have the review history, or is of a low sensitivity compared to the SOX requirements, things like that. You can highlight deviations or abnormal situations or problems that have been detected on the access. You can have auto revocation, meaning that in the review all the access that do not follow the standard or cause a high risk deviation from the control plan may be automatically marked for revocation. So that all those features reduce the effort. But, and that's a serious but, not kidding here, if the reviewer does not complete the review by the deadline, any remaining record, any remaining unreviewed access will be automatically revoked, and the access will be removed. So it's a very strict guideline, and obviously, again, because we are talking about compliance process, that makes sense. You cannot say, oh, I'm 70% compliant. Either you're compliant or you're not compliant. If you've already only reviewed 70% of the records, the remaining 30% will be considered by default as non-compliant and will be revoked. That's the reality for our customers. Let's consider a second use case, technical accounts tagging. By tagging, I mean really adding those extra infos that you're missing on the technical accounts, especially in order to be able to review them, to perform this periodical review. So here, the purpose is really to have an accurate assignment of those technical accounts on Linux or Unix systems, heterogeneous systems, to users. So we know who is the owner of which account, and also eliminate some data quality issues, especially the fact that account identifiers may be ambiguous, meaning that the same identifier can be used on two different boxes but belong to different users. So obviously, from a traceability perspective, it's not adequate, and it eases management and cybersecurity traceability if you ensure that a unique identifier is assigned to each user. But when you start on thousands of old Unix systems that did not follow the same standards and were built, over 10 or 20 years, that's not the case. You have a lot of accounts that are either unknown, so you don't know who they belong to at all, or they do not follow the standards, naming conventions, etc. We're talking here in this use case about tens of thousands of such accounts. Each situation is investigated in a continuous review process by an operator. So there may be several operators in parallel, obviously. And by investigating, I mean that they are going to ask themselves a number of questions, such as who owns this account? Is it still used? Is the user still there, actually? What's the purpose of this account? Is this access making sense, access to this particular Unix box? And depending on the answers of to those questions, the operator would trigger a different remediation process to fix the account. Maybe change the identifier, reassign it to a new owner, or maybe ask for deletion or disabling the account. Progress is monitored by very simple KPIs. How many accounts did I fix last week? How many accounts unfixed accounts are remaining, etc. And as I said before, the tagged accounts, so the accounts that are now cleaned, they are reviewed from a compliance standpoint during a periodic access review, twice a year. So the two processes, the two review processes are working hand in hand, and somehow the continuous review enables the periodic access review, if that makes sense. Third example is somehow different. Okay, animation mistake here. Sorry about that. So we're talking about micro-certification to continuous review. Micro-certification is somehow the extent of a periodic access review when you want to have very frequent, very short periodic reviews. Obviously, you'll try also to reduce the number of records to be reviewed every for every cycle. For instance, you're going to review only the changes since the previous review. So, as you can understand, it's very quick sampling of the situations, and we're trying to be very reactive. So review very often and find the changes and review the changes as soon as they occur. So it's in between the traditional periodic access review and the continuous review. It somehow enables a continuous review for compliance purposes. Obviously, it requires perfect execution, because as soon as you start to get late, you will have overlapping micro-certifications, or you're going to revoke everything because you haven't performed your job. See what I said before. So if you don't want to have this backlog accumulating, it really necessitates to have a very well-oiled organization with reviewers and backup reviewers, etc., etc. But I've seen it working in a financial institution, and it may be really very optimal when you're in a mature organization, because then you spend very little time to perform reviews. Because if you only focus on changes and changes that occurred since just a few days or maybe a week, there are very little things to be reviewed every time. So it's close to zero time spent on reviews. This is an actual example of a very mature financial organization that is using both the periodic access review, the traditional periodic access review, the micro-certification approach, and the continuous review for different purposes. And that leads to this very sophisticated schedule, which I'm going to explain in just a few seconds. All resources are reviewed at least twice a year. So we have semi-annual reviews for all resources, traditional periodic access reviews. For more sensitive resources, we may also have quarterly reviews. Makes sense. Then there are those very sensitive resources that are micro-certified every week. So we are checking on changes to those to those very sensitive resources. By very sensitive resources, I may say, for instance, user groups with admin privileges that allow to get access to sensitive resources, those kind of things. So what are the changes to the group memberships? And we'll get those reviews on a weekly basis. But then we came to the conclusion that there are also extremely sensitive resources upon which you want to act as soon as something happens. So it's an event-based continuous review which triggers alerting. So if nothing happened, that's fine. But as soon as something is detected, then we have somehow a ticket coming to the queue, sent to the reviewer. Please review this situation and tell us if that's okay or not, and maybe enter an additional info if missing, or things like that. Okay, so it's really very close to traditional alerting in this case, compiling information coming from Active Directory, coming from the business applications, coming from the network, etc., to uncover very specific high-risk scenarios that you want to tackle as soon as they are discovered. I hope that makes sense. So short wrap-up. We're coming to the end of my presentation, and hopefully you'll have a lot of questions just afterward. As you can understand, periodic access review and continuous reviews are really complementary approaches. They serve different purposes, but they may be used in conjunction with each other, with one another. Periodic access reviews, really, we're addressing 3 compliance requirements, which are accountability, completeness, accuracy, and traceability. Whereas continuous reviews, we're addressing risky situations, so in bulk, as they are detected on the fly, etc., with an event-oriented approach. So as soon as we find something, let's fix it. But somehow there's no, there's not this compliance mindset in the process. They both feed on the same data, and somehow they are also utilizing the same technology. So it may be interesting to explore synergies, a bit like the use case I've just described, where one feeds the other, or both are used in conjunction. That's it for my introduction to periodic access review versus continuous review.
It looks like, Cyril, we may have some questions that came in during your discussion.
That's great. That's great. Maybe we'll let our viewers just 1 more minute to ask their questions through the chat. A bit of a reminder here, we'll have an extremely interesting session on March 24th with ADP, Automated Data Processing. That's the HR company, which you probably know. They've been using Brainwave for their review needs for 5 years now, probably, almost 5 years. And so we'll let Pierre Dumas from ADP describe their journey towards access review automation, and how they are currently using the Brainwave technology to address those needs across all geographies. You have here the link to register. You can go to our website to register. We look forward to seeing you on this session. There'll be no vendor talk, only the testimony from ADP. So, do we have questions?
It looks like you have a few there, Cyril. You can answer them for us, I hope.
Yes. So thank you very much for those questions. Feel free to chime in, obviously. The first question here, Thomas, could continuous access reviews be considered valid in the context of SOX compliance under certain conditions? I have a quite strong opinion about that, and that could trigger some interesting debate. Actually, unfortunately, that won't be the case today, but we can keep this conversation going if you like. My view is no. Continuous review, the way I've described it, is not cannot be used in a compliance mandate, because although you have traceability, you don't have full accountability. Most often the process for the continuous processing involves several people, so it's not a yes or no decision that you can tie to an accountable reviewer. The third pillar is that it does not operate on a schedule. You have this flow of situations that you have to review. You cannot ensure that a given record will be periodically reviewed, so you don't have, if you like, completeness and accuracy the way you can have with the periodic review. So from a compliance perspective, probably I'm almost certain your auditors will tell you that's not adequate. That's not the right way to perform the review. However, as I said before, there are a number of situations where, especially if you have data quality issues or you don't exactly know who are the reviewers, then it may be interesting to have this continuous review working in the background and somehow taking care of those data quality issues or account assignment issues, reconciliation, etc. So that you can perform your periodic access review, compliance review in good conditions and make sure that they come to conclusion with 100% answer rates. This is something Pierre Dumas from ADP will talk about, because this is exactly the way they are structuring their reviews. Another question from Thomas: have you seen automated corrective actions performance system? There are situations that are non-ambiguous, which may trigger automated answers or automated actions to fix problems, to remediate to problems. Yes. I wouldn't call it a review process, although, as I said, we have many of our customers are leveraging helpers that automatically suggest review decisions to the reviewers. So if you have, for instance, if you have accounts that belong to leavers, then you may have an automated revocation suggestion. That makes sense, and it saves a lot of time for reviewers, obviously. From a compliance perspective, you need the human intervention. You need the reviewer because you need an accountable party, and I don't think your automator could be considered as an accountable party. Will I show the tool today? No, I won't show the tool today. This session was really aimed at developing the differences and similarities between the two types of reviews. We're thinking about setting up a tool presentation webinar session in the coming couple of weeks. If you're interested in such a session, please vote on the chat. That would be helpful to us. You can also go to our website and you will see there are replays of previous webinars and videos introducing our tool with demo sections. And obviously, you can also reach out to us and have your own private demo if you like. I have another question from Zoeb. Is it Zoeb? Sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name right. Does it interface with an identity management tool like SailPoint? SailPoint does UAR, yes. And what are the additional benefits from Brainwave? So that's a that's a question we get quite often, as you can guess. Many organizations, including the organizations I named before, have deployed identity management or identity governance software pieces. So ForgeRock, SailPoint, Savint, you name it, RSA, Oracle, whatever. Yes, there are a number of benefits to using Brainwave as a dedicated tool to perform identity analytics and user access reviews. And I will just give you a few arguments there. First argument is we are not dependent upon deploying connectors and things like that. So you don't need to manage the access in order to be able to review it. The identity management scope can be different from the identity analytics scope, and hence the UAR scope. So that's very important when you have an IT environment where you have legacy systems, mainframes, or things like that that are usually not well handled by identity management systems. You have bespoke applications, in-house apps. You have cloud-based systems. You have, I don't know, ERPs, etc., etc. So all those heterogeneous systems may be part of the review scope, may not be managed by the IAM system. So that's first argument. Second argument is that even if you consider the scope of the identity management system, most of the time, 99% of the time, the identity management system is only focusing on user access. People and the people's accounts. So all the technical accounts, service accounts, generic accounts, and all the technical access that you may have on servers, on databases, on network elements, or even inside the applications, inside the business applications that are not tied to individuals, in the sense that they are not named accounts, they don't belong to individuals, or even though some individuals may be entitled to use them, are not managed by the identity management system. However, you can still ingest those data, analyze them in Brainwave, and review them in Brainwave. So for instance, we provide to our customers templates to perform privileged access management reviews. We are reviewing the privileged access within a CyberArk system, for instance. So that's a second strong difference. And the third difference is that the user experience is quite good with Brainwave, with very advanced review interfaces, and this is something you'll see in the demo. We have a way to perform the review as a pivot table, so a cross table, if you like, of the applications and the users, so that similarities or discrepancies are really very easily spotted when you look at your review screen, and performing the review is really very quick. Okay, do I have other questions? You're welcome, Thomas, for your question, for your message. I don't see any other question. Am I missing anything? No, I don't think so. I think I answered everyone. What time is it? We only have 1 minute left. So if there are no other questions, I'd like to thank you all for attending. Thank you, Leanne, for assisting me today.
Thank you, Cyril, for your great presentation.
Thank you. One last word, maybe. You will get the link to the webinar replay, so the YouTube link to the webinar replay. So feel free to spread the word, obviously, and feel free to reach us and continue this interesting conversation. And we look forward to seeing you on our next webinar sessions. Thank you very much. Enjoy your day.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.